The night began with the kind of silence that presses against your chest, the kind that makes you feel invisible even to yourself. I was standing on the shoulder of a narrow road outside Columbus, Ohio, hands stained with grease, pockets almost empty, wondering how a man who once believed in miracles ended up believing only in survival. That was the exact moment a silver sedan rolled to a helpless stop beside me, its hazard lights blinking like a quiet cry for help, and my life shifted in a way I never saw coming. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small good deed can change everything. Your support keeps stories like this alive. My name is Aaron Whitaker, and back then I was 32, living out of a borrowed pickup and whatever pride I still had left. A year earlier, I had lost my job as a mechanic in Dayton after the shop closed without warning. Bills stacked up faster than hope, and when my marriage collapsed under the weight of unpaid rent and quiet resentment, I packed what I could and left. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd get back on my feet, but temporary has a way of becoming permanent when you're tired and alone. Fixing cars on the roadside for cash or gratitude became my way of staying afloat, both financially and emotionally. It reminded me that my hands could still make something broken work again. The woman stepped out of the sedan carefully, as if the night itself might trip her. She was around my age, wearing a simple blue dress that didn't belong on the side of a dark road. Her hair was pinned back neatly, and her face carried the tension of someone trying not to panic. I noticed the faint tremble in her hands as she hugged her arms around herself against the cold. Her name, I would later learn, was Rebecca Collins, and she was on her way to a blind date she had already waited too long for in life. I didn't ask many questions. I never did. Cars don't need explanations, just attention. The problem turned out to be a loose battery cable, simple but terrifying when you're alone at night and your phone is dying. As I worked, the smell of oil and metal grounded me, and for a few minutes, the world felt predictable again. Rebecca watched quietly, her eyes filled with something between relief and disbelief, as if she hadn't expected a stranger to stop without wanting something in return. When the engine finally turned over and the headlights burned steady, something unexpected happened. Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes soft, and without ceremony, she leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss against my cheek. It was brief, innocent, and completely disarming. She smiled, told me we would meet again someday, and drove off into the night before I could even process what had happened. I stood there long after her taillights disappeared, my cheek warm, my heart racing like I had just been handed a promise instead of a reward. I tried to forget about it. Life doesn't pause for moments like that, especially when you're struggling. The days that followed were heavy. My truck broke down outside Indianapolis, forcing me to sell my tools just to get it running again. I slept in parking lots, showered at gas stations, and reminded myself not to hope for things that didn't belong to me anymore. Still, every so often, I'd catch myself touching my cheek absent-mindedly, wondering if Rebecca had meant what she said or if it was just kindness wrapped in impulse. Weeks later, fate decided to stop pretending it wasn't paying attention. I had picked up a short-term job at a small garage in Louisville, Kentucky, the kind that paid cash and asked no questions. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled overhead, a familiar silver sedan pulled into the lot. My breath caught before my mind could catch up. Rebecca stepped out, her hair damp, her expression surprised in the same stunned way I felt. The coincidence felt too precise to be accidental, like a line being drawn between two scattered points in time. Life didn't suddenly become easy after that. Rebecca wasn't a fairy tale solution to my problems. She was a real person with her own scars. She worked as a nurse, carried the weight of long shifts and emotional exhaustion, and had been burned by trusting the wrong people before. We talked slowly, carefully, as if sudden movements might scare the moment away. Coffee turned into shared meals into long walks through city parks where autumn leaves collected around our feet like unfinished thoughts. What changed wasn't just companionship, but perspective. Rebecca saw me not as a man who had lost everything, but as someone who still chose to help when he didn't have much to give. She encouraged me to apply for steady work, even helped me rewrite my resume late one night at her kitchen table while rain tapped against the windows. I found a full-time position at a reputable auto shop in Cincinnati, benefits included, the kind of stability I had almost convinced myself was gone forever. There were setbacks. Old fears don't disappear just because life improves. I struggled with the shame of my past, with the quiet voice that told me I didn't deserve a fresh start. There were nights I pulled away emotionally, afraid that if I leaned in too hard, everything would collapse again. Rebecca didn't fix me. She stayed. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing anyone can do. Winter came, harsh and honest, but this time I wasn't facing it alone. We spent evenings cooking simple meals, talking about childhood memories, faith, and the strange paths that bring people together. I learned that Rebecca had almost cancelled her blind date that night, exhausted from work and tempted to stay home. If she had, our lives would have remained parallel lines, never touching. As spring approached, I saved enough to move into a small apartment. On the day I signed the lease, I sat alone on the floor, keys in my hand, overwhelmed by how fragile and miraculous stability felt. I thought about the man I had been on that roadside, convinced that kindness was something you gave away without expecting it to return. I realized then that sometimes kindness circles back when you need it most. If this story is touching your heart, if it reminds you that compassion still matters, please take a moment near the end to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need hope tonight. The last time I saw that stretch of road in Ohio, Rebecca was beside me. We had pulled over intentionally, not because of a breakdown, but because memory asked us to pause. The night air was calm, no fear in it this time. I understood then that the kiss hadn't been a reward. It had been a promise, not of romance alone, but of connection, of the quiet truth that doing good without expectation can open doors you didn't know existed. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and tell us where you're watching from and whether you believe small acts of kindness can change a life. I fixed a woman's car on her way to a blind date, and in doing so, I unknowingly repaired something inside myself. We did meet again, not because fate is dramatic, but because kindness leaves traces. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to follow them, those traces lead you home.